Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. On today's episode, we're going to talk about turkey food plots. A question that I'm getting an awful lot from landowners, land managers is what food plots can I plant to increase the amount of time that turkeys spend on my farm or to increase the turkey population. There's a lot of places throughout the country that turkey numbers are on the decline. Our turkey population here in West Kentucky is skyrocketing. It is not uncommon at all for me to have a deer hunter sitting over a agricultural type setting, maybe a cut corn or a cut soybean field, and for them to come back and say, Wes, I saw 40 or 50 different turkeys tonight. That's not an uncommon thing at all. That happens very regular up here. We've got a tremendous amount of turkey, and I believe that's for a couple reasons that I'll explain later on in the video. I don't run any turkey hunts on the outfitter. It's a busy time of the year for me. I'm food plotting, farming. I just don't have time to do the turkey hunts. I get asked an awful lot, but it's just something that I don't have time to do. Now my daughters are getting old enough, they want to start hunting, so I'm going to try to take them hunting this year. We're going to try to tag a couple big gobblers. As I make a lot of the farm visits, I'm hearing the same thing, that turkey populations are down, that the populations aren't as high. What food plots can I plant for whitetails that will also help the wild turkey? That's a big concern of a lot of folks, is being able to help a lot of the different wildlife that's on their farm. So the first thing that we need to know about turkeys is, what do they eat? Turkeys are one of those more of like an opportunistic feeder. They feed on a ton of different things. They're very similar to a whitetail. A whitetail's not just going to feed on soybeans or corn or browse. He's going to be a wide variety in his diet. Well, a turkey's even more so than that. They are opportunistic feeders. They're going to feed a lot on bugs, grubs, beetles. They're also going to eat alfalfa, clover, legumes, grass, nuts, berries, corn, soybeans, wheat. You name it, they pretty much eat it. Turkeys and deer are real similar in the aspect of we can add food during the spring, summer, and fall, and that's really not when it's the most critical for a turkey. It's very similar to a deer. During the summer months, turkeys and deer have a lot of food available to them. It's typically later on in the late fall, early winter, early spring is when food sources are drying up a little bit. For us here in Western Kentucky, with our population being so high, and I look at that and I say, why is our population higher than a lot of places throughout the country? And I think it's for a variety of reasons. I think one is the ag fields. Turkeys love waste grain. So if you've never been around an ag field very much, a combine that was used to harvest those crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, when it goes through the field, there are different settings that operator can turn on, off, speed up, slow down inside that combine. So for instance, there is a setting in there where it's air blowing through that combine. So basically what that's for is the trash and the chaff that goes through that combine will be blown out the back end. If you set that air up to where the seeds will fall on through because they're heavy enough, but the trash blows out the back. There are also settings where you can speed up the rotor, slow it down. There's all kinds of different settings. I'm not going to go into all those around here. I'm just name a couple examples for you. Grain is different in every single field, and grain throughout the field is different. So a very small grain, maybe on the very end of a corn kernel, may be light enough. If that fan's turned up strong enough, it may blow it right out the back. So when a combine comes through, there's a tremendous amount of waste grain left in this field. Turkeys and deer take note of that immediately. They are going to flock to a harvested corn, harvested soybean field. You are going to find turkeys in there. This is a major thing for our turkeys. This is something that as you're deer hunting through the fall, all the way from say October up until the end, and which is mid-January, you're going to see large flocks of turkeys out in those fields trying to find the waste grain. Another thing that makes our area very good for the turkeys is our hardwoods. We do have hardwoods. So I know somebody's going to say this, and they're going to say, man, we got so much ag in our area, the turkey population's in decline. And I certainly can see that if all the hardwoods are gone. And that's the case across a lot of the places in the United States. The woods are getting pushed out so they can farm. The fence rows are getting pushed out. That's the nesting cover. They need that nesting cover. You can have all the food in the world, but if you don't have the cover, you're not going to have the wildlife, the deer or the turkey. So we have to have a kind of a combination of both. The farmers can't clear much more off because they pretty much cleared all the flatlands or the slight sloped land. But anything as you get out into the woods is typically on too big of a slope to farm. So it's grown up into hardwoods. As I've said before, about 60% of our trees are oaks. During the fall and winter months, there is a tremendous amount of acorns most years for the turkeys to eat throughout the fall months. And I was scouting yesterday, walking through the woods, and I started seeing a bunch of turkey scratching around a great old big red oak. Found several caps where they were just fresh busted off, and those turkeys were eating those red oak acorns. And the reason for that is that tannic acid that's inside there has started to dwindle down. Because a red oak is full of tannic acid, or a white oak has very minimal, that makes those whitetails want to eat the white oak and not so much the red oak as soon as it falls. What food plots should we plant to aid in the turkey population? There's several different ones here, okay? So any type of a green plot is going to be a big benefit to a wild turkey. So if that's even a cereal grain that you planted last fall, that's a clover plot, an alfalfa plot, anything like that is going to be phenomenal for turkeys. I'm almost guaranteed that you're going to see strutters out in those green fields this time of the year. I've got a couple cameras set up. I've got one on the alfalfa plot. I've got another one down in another location where it was a cereal rye food plot, and both of them are just getting hammered with turkeys right now. As the alfalfa starts to get bigger, bugs will really get attracted to that alfalfa. That's probably the most bugs that I've ever seen in one place is when you get alfalfa that's say a foot, 15 inches tall. Bugs will just be on there thick as hair. You'll be bush hogging it and they'll just be coming up hitting you. There's no wonder why turkeys love that so much. They actually love eating the alfalfa, but they, on the second side of it, they actually love the bugs just as much. So they'll be able to get a balanced diet while going through that alfalfa plot. The alfalfa plot is a wonderful, wonderful tool for turkeys and deer. It's just a pain in the butt. That's the worst part about an alfalfa plot, is it's not an easy plot to plant or manage, but it is very, very beneficial to a large spread of wildlife. One thing that I see around here, it doesn't happen a ton, but it happens some in the wintertime when we get a real harsh winter. And obviously we had a really mild winter this year, very little cold weather, very little snow and ice. But I remember a couple years back where the tables were turned and it was completely different. We had an extremely cold winter and we got about 10, 12 inches of snow, and we had a layer of ice as well. Deer is one thing. They got a lot of woody browse they can eat on that time of year and keep theirself going. But what's an old turkey that time of the year? There's no way you're scratching through frozen ice, and all that snow, really, really difficult for a wild turkey to be able to thrive in conditions like that. If we can leave a crop standing for the fall, that is such a big benefit to all forms of wildlife. I remember it's probably been 10 years ago, I had probably a 2-acre standing soybean food plot. Left it for the deer. At that time, we had a good deer population, but probably not as much as what we have now. There was some that made it all through the winter. The next spring, I was getting ready to plant that, and I went in and bush hogged it, and I flushed a covey of quail out. And that was one of the last coveys that I saw there in that time. Is they had plentiful food that was above the snow and ice that they could eat all winter long. And turkeys the same way. If you give them some food that they can survive on through the winter, you'll see you'll be a lot easier on those birds if you're providing food that's up over the snow. In some areas you can't, obviously. If you get 4 foot of snow, you can't do that. But around here, we get 6, 8 inches most of the time and a lot of ice. We can plant standing corn, standing beans, and bush hog a little bit of that standing corn along throughout the wintertime and really go a long way in feeding the whitetails and the turkeys those harshest months that they go through. Chua is very, very popular for a turkey food plot. At first glance, this Chua looks an awful lot like yellow nutsedge. And I'll probably get some backlash on this. It looks very similar, but they claim, so if you planted this field right here in Chua, it wouldn't spread throughout the entire field. I have never planted Chua. I've never planted food plots specifically for turkeys. We plant food plots for deer and the turkeys benefit. Almost all of my food plots, I will have a tremendous amount of turkeys using those food plots pretty much year round. It's something in there for them as well. Chua is something that I've never grown, and I can't say whether or not I would plant that or not. I know they claim that is a really, really good food plot. I would have a hard time planting something that is very closely related to yellow nutsedge, because yellow nutsedge is, any of you that have fought yellow nutsedge knows, it is a pain in the hind end. One of those plants that is just an absolute nightmare to fight, and you don't want to fight it. Very difficult to kill, and very difficult to try to raise anything out there because they keep germing up through the tubers. You kill them back, they just keep germing back, and it's really difficult to get those under control. Chua is very similar to yellow nutsedge, but they claim it is different and it will not spread. They claim that turkeys absolutely love it, and I'm sure they absolutely do. So what is needed for a turkey population to thrive? I think what makes our turkey population thrive is several different things. There has been a tremendous uptick in the amount of guys that are predator hunting here lately. That is something that is really getting big in this area right now, where 3-4 years ago, you had one guy that was maybe hunting, and now all of a sudden there's a tremendous amount of people that have started predator hunting. Raccoons, coyotes are very, very hard on a nesting hen. So the more we can eliminate, the more we can trap and eliminate those threats to the nest, the better chances that we're gonna have for a better hatch rate to be able to have more poults running around. Another thing that we need is cover. And that's something that in my neck of the woods, while it's sparse for deer hunting, we don't have those 25, 30 acre thickets. We do have some thicker stuff laying around. And I think that really helps with the turkey population, is we have a tremendous amount of ag, yet we also have pretty good nesting cover. And so that really helps our turkey population just continue to grow. That's something that really benefits the turkeys, is having a good, safe place where they can nest, but also having an abundance of food that the ag is providing. So I think ag is extremely important in a turkey population. And I know there's gonna be some folks that say, man, I'm in an area where it's heavy ag and there's very few turkeys. And I'm sure that's the case. And there's a spot in our area that is very similar. The difference is, in that part of the world, all the trees are getting taken out for farming. When they pushed the trees off, all of a sudden this went from covered and they turned it more into ag. Where we're at, we have the ag and we have the cover, and we have rolling hills to where they can't plant this right here. So they're not going to spend the money to clear this off when that's not going to be of any benefit to them. In areas where the farmers, the landowners are pushing off trees right and left, yeah, you're going to see a decline in turkey population and whitetail population. Although I think whitetails are a little bit more adaptable to environments rather than the turkey is. Turkeys really need that cover. I think to really make that population climb, we've got to check as many of these boxes as we can, and having food for them year round, having cover for them year round, taking care of those predators are all three great big things that we can do to help the turkey population. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash the like and subscribe button.